I've got something I've got to show you.
Hello, and welcome to Retro Review, where we look into gaming's past to reanalyze these older titles. Today we are going back in time where the reputation of Sega and its main mascot weren't as tarnished as they are today. That's right, today we are looking at Sonic Adventure, initially released in 1998 for the ill-fated Sega Dreamcast. The version of the game that we will be using to record footage though is the Steam-released HD version of the game, which is based off the director's cut that was released for the Nintendo GameCube in 2003. This version has a few graphical updates as well as new mission objectives for returning players, but is largely the same game. Since Sonic Adventure was Sega's first attempt at making a full-on 3D Sonic game, you might think that we would cut them some slack. We're not! This was the title that was supposed to push the Dreamcast into the greedy hands of its consumers, and propel Sonic into the future of gaming. It did. It's just not the future they probably wanted.
What? Tails? Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah!
So, I'm gonna get this out there right at the very beginning. Sonic Adventure is not a great game. In fact, it's not even really a good game. And no amount of rose-tinted nostalgia is going to change that. With that in mind, I do have a lot more to say about it, and despite the fact that I can't call Sonic Adventure a good game, I also have to say that I have a lot of fun with it, as strange as that may seem. The story of Sonic Adventure is spread out between the 6 main playable characters. These are of course Sonic, Yellow Flying Sonic, Red Punchy Sonic, Pink Sonic Stalker with a giant hammer, Mr. Roboto, and Big the Cat. We don't talk about the last one. Each character has their own agenda, and while certain characters may work together, their stories will eventually branch out and take them in different directions. While each character has their own narrative, together they form one cohesive plot by the time the credits roll for the final time. Certain characters are more interconnected with others, such as Sonic and Tails, or Amy and E103 Gamma, but all of the characters have some part that adds to the overall narrative, and will have grown in some way from their adventures. Except for Big. I hate you, Big.
Oh, now what am I gonna do?
Since most of the characters interact with each other at some point or another, you're going to see some of the same events multiple times. What's kind of cool about this is that the events change depending on whose story is being told. For instance, early on in the game, there is a scene where if you're playing as Sonic, you and Tails end up running into Dr. Eggman. Vague threats are made, and then Sonic ends up fighting Eggman and defeating him. However, if you're playing as Tails, you'll run into the exact same scenario, only this time, Tails is the one who ends up fighting Eggman. It's interesting to think that maybe these events aren't what truly happened, but it's just a story told from that character's perspective, which would explain the reason why certain characters win fights in one story while they lose fights in another. Though I'm probably just putting more thought into this than is actually deserved.
Amy?
Hey, Mr. Robot! I know you're not an evil sort! Wait, remember me?
Amy! Oh, I really don't get this.
The game's mechanics are basically the same for every character, but there are small differences in what they can do. Sonic can do his homing attacks, Tails can fly, Knuckles can punch and dig, Amy can use her hammer, E103 can shoot things, and Big can fish. Each character also has different objectives, such as Sonic simply needing to get to the end of his level as quickly as possible, while Tails often has to play through the same levels with the additional objective that he has to beat another character to the end. Usually Sonic. Knuckles has to try and find 3 pieces of a giant emerald in each of his levels that he's trying to put back together. Amy is trying to protect a bird that managed to escape the evil Dr. Robotnik, while also dodging a robot that is constantly pursuing her. E103 is usually tasked with tracking down and either eliminating or capturing an enemy. Big is trying to find his friend Froggy, whom he is constantly getting separated from, and has to play a fishing minigame every time he finds him. Seriously, why is this character here? He serves virtually no plot relevance, and he is probably one of the worst Sonic characters ever made. And there is a large list of characters gunning for that title. Of all the characters, Sonic and Tails missions are probably the most fun, often being simple and fast-paced. Big's are arguably the worst, for obvious reasons, while the others range from decent to meh. Animation in the game is a bit of a mixed bag. While in missions you will often be moving too fast to really notice anything off about how the characters are animating, cutscenes, however, they're just awful. They're really awful, guys. They range from so bad it's funny to just plain bad. Seriously, these animations are something that would be on par with what a college student would be able to produce 15 years ago. And before someone argues that, well, it's 1998, 3D wasn't even good back then, I'll admit, yes, you are right. 3D was not very good back then, especially when compared to games today. But if you also compare it with other games at the time, the average 3D animation was still better than this. To prove it, here are a few 3D titles that came out around or before Sonic Adventure. Sadly, animations aren't the only issues that the story segments have, as character voices are often mistimed or awkwardly placed. And there are moments where what should be a tense moment is ruined with long stretches of just nothing. Many of these problems would be addressed with future titles, but that doesn't make their inclusion in this game any less noticeable or excusable. Speaking of character voices, the voices themselves range from decent to ear-bleedingly bad. The two standouts in the positive side would have to be Ryan Drummond as the Blue Blur himself, and the late Dean Bristow as the wonderfully overacted Dr. Robotnik.
Aha! Testing 1, 2, 3. You, the elite egg carrier crew, are here today to hear a very special announcement. Behold! It's a tailed frog! Very unique.
On the negative side, we have Big and Tails. Oh my god, Tails, why?
Without more emeralds, the monster can't transform, so it's up to us to get the emeralds before Eggman does, huh?
Gameplay can end up being buggy at times, with strange things happening for seemingly no reason. You can oftentimes die by falling through what should have been a solid floor, randomly being catapulted out of the stage, or simply getting stuck on nothing while an enemy slowly attacks you until your inevitable demise. Standing back and seeing the lack of polish on the rest of the game, I'm actually not surprised that the game ended up being as buggy as it was. But it's disappointing all the same. Sadly, based off of the games that came out after Sonic Adventure, it doesn't look like a lesson was ever learned here. One of the best parts of the game would actually have to be the music. There's something catchy about the majority of the tracks, and the main character themes are actually fairly good in a late 90s, early 2000s corny kind of way. The songs that aren't the highlights of the soundtrack are still remarkably solid, and memorable enough that I can randomly get them stuck in my head after only hearing a short snippet from them. Parts of the soundtrack that are supposed to be more emotional tend to hit the notes that they need to, producing the correct effect. It's actually kind of funny, but someone once pointed out to me that as the Sonic games got worse, their main themes and music tended to get better. So I guess the question is, since I've already told you that the game is fairly bad, and have spent the majority of this review tearing the game apart, why am I going into this amount of depth when the end verdict is still the same? Well, the truth is that despite everything that I've said, I still kind of like the game, and can still have fun with it today, despite its flaws. I don't really know what it is, because on paper, this should be a game that I absolutely despise due to how unpolished it is. But I still enjoy picking it up every now and then. Call it nostalgia, call it favoritism, it is what it is, but I actually do like to play it. So, I guess my final verdict is, big as a poo-poo head. Hey, thanks for watching the review for Sonic Adventure. I did try and do something of a tonal difference for this video. I'm not sure how well it worked, but let me know in the comments below. And of course, if you like the video, subscribe, all that fun stuff that you've heard a million times from a million other YouTubers. Also, if you have anything else that you would like to see me review, please let me know. I'm planning on doing Sonic Adventure 2 in the future. Not immediately, but in the future. Not sure exactly when that would be. The next retro review I'm doing is Shadow Hearts, and that should be coming out relatively shortly. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.